I'm not a crook.
If you thought the right wing could not get lower than attacking 12-year-old Graham Frost and his family, think again. In a moment, the 2-year-old girl now under fire for getting federal S-chip coverage to pay for life-saving heart surgery. First, in our fourth story tonight, the S-chip battle has led a spokesman for Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell to attack without actually naming both myself and our next guest, Paul Krugman. Our sins? Last week, we each reported that a McConnell aide emailed false and personal information about the Frosts to the media. His source, an unnamed blogger. Our source, abcnews.com. Today, the aide, spokesman Don Stewart, wrote without irony, quote, a liberal talk show host and a liberal opinion columnist at the New York Times, parroting the same anonymous sources, credited our office with playing a role in starting the investigation. That is not the case. As I pointed out to reporters more than a week ago, the Frost family is legit. Mr. Stewart fails to mention why he pointed that out. He was retracting his email sent just hours before, the very same email we reported on, which said, quote, apparently there's more to the story on the kid Graham Frost. Bloggers have done a little digging and turned up that the dad owns his own business, which also included the lie about Graham Frost's private school tuition. Quoting again, despite the news profiles reporting a family income of only $45K for the Frosts, could the Dems really have done that bad a job of vetting this family? Mr. Stewart now claims he was voicing skepticism about the attacks on Graham, which might make sense if Stewart or McConnell had publicly denounced those attacks, or the new ones on 2-year-old Bethany Wilkerson, subject of a new pro-S-chip ad, whose parents make less than the Frosts, $34,000, and own even less. They rent their home, and whose lack of health insurance, like 47 million other Americans, led the National Review today to declare that they should never have had any children. Let's turn now to the other target of Mr. McConnell's office today, New York Times columnist Paul Krugman, author most recently of The Conscience of the Liberal. Great thanks as always for your time tonight, sir.
Great to be on.
Before we get to Graham Frost, this latest attack that Bethany Wilkerson's parents should not have conceived her because they lacked the requisite health insurance. Yeah. Do you have a more eloquent response than speechlessness?
Well, you know, I'm not so speechless because this is actually standard operating procedure. You know, the fake scandals, we had lots of that in the 90s, and the making mock of people in trouble. Look, Ronald Reagan with his welfare queen driving a Cadillac, who never existed. That goes back to the 70s. Ronald Reagan in 1964 making fun of John F. Kennedy's claim that millions of Americans go to bed hungry every night, saying, oh, they were probably all on a diet. This is not, one of the things I say in my book, The Conscience of the Liberal, is there hasn't been any change. They've been the same for the past 40-plus years.
Why, though, not attack the policy? It certainly would seem to have some roots in actual conservatism, a disagreement with how much money is being spent. Why is a Pavlovian need to attack personally anyone who advocates the policy still in force?
Oh, because in the past it has worked. I mean, what's unusual about this case is that you and I and the progressive blogosphere and all of that stuff were able to mount an effective, quick counterattack, and because email is better than, you know, we were able to get hold of that email from McConnell's aide. So it's the difference is not in the heartlessness and the viciousness of the tactics. The difference is that this time they got caught red-handed.
Help explain the difference here, if you would. Why does a group of people proclaiming themselves pro-life see no barrier to preserving the life of fetuses or of Terry Schiavo, but when it's actual people who are already up and running, kids like Bethany and Graham Frost, they literally want them? In Graham Frost's case, somebody called for public hanging, and in this little girl's case, the argument was, well, they didn't have sufficient medical insurance, so she should never have been conceived. How is that? Where is there any straight line in there?
I never know what to make of that. What I do know is the essence of what these people are about is they hate the idea that we are our brother's keepers. They hate the idea that society has some responsibility to take care of those less fortunate. And the thing that really drives them crazy about stories, I mean, it's exactly the fact that the stories are so good about children in need. That's why they feel this, you know, you say Pavlovian, but it's actually a strategy. They have to debunk. They, you know, the progressives are doing a very good job of putting a human face on the policies they want.
Am I also missing something else here that, regarding the strategy? And I asked this of the Frosts, Graham Frost's parents last night. Here's a kid who was in terrible shape, still has partial paralysis of a vocal cord. He's got brain damage. And in a couple of years, however he got there, he's able to make a speech on national radio and just to function under those circumstances. It seems to me if you're opposed to what a particular medical plan, an aspect of health care, wouldn't you go farther strategically by complimenting this kid, congratulating him, rejoicing in his recovery, and then slamming what he's saying as opposed to slamming him?
Well, you know, it just drives them crazy. I mean, the Democrats have managed to put a human face on socialized medicine, if you like. You know, that's a slander, but on the kinds of things they want to do. The Republicans are talking abstraction. We don't want socialized medicine, private sector, private initiative, and the Democrats are showing you a 12-year-old kid who was saved by this program, and it drives them crazy.
Despite the efforts of these two families and the little girl and Graham, the House on Thursday is not expected to get these additional 20 votes that would make this veto-proof. What is the impact on the 4 million kids that won't be protected here?
Well, we don't know quite how this works out. I mean, the original Bush proposal would actually lead to a contraction of the program. So there'd be hundreds of thousands of kids who would otherwise have coverage who won't, even under the original funding. Now, this additional thing, they're going to have to wait. I can't believe this is going to stand for very long, because I think the American public is going to demand. We're talking about children here, but it's amazing. They really are. The Republicans are going to uphold Bush on this incredible veto.
And lastly, Mr. Stewart of Mr. McConnell's office now taking credit for retracting a slanderous email to reporters containing story tips he never vetted in the slightest just a couple hours after he sent that proverbial lie of Mark Twain out around the world. Does he seem to you to have any idea that he works for a United States senator, that there's some sort of privilege and responsibility that comes with that job?
You know, what was amazing was the last sentence of that email. Is it possible that they did such a poor job of vetting? And he, of course, committed that very same sin. But, you know, they've done this sort of thing many times. As I said, if you just look, and this is not actually exceptional in its viciousness on their part. It's normal in its viciousness. What's exceptional is that they got caught.
Paul Krugman of the New York Times, one of the people who caught them, and author of the new book, The Conscience of a Liberal. Always a pleasure having a chance to have a conversation with you, sir.
Great to be on.